For centuries, the Samnites fiercely opposed Roman expansion, leading to the Samnite Wars, one of the greatest challenges Rome faced. Even after enduring 3 major wars, they refused to surrender, allying with figures like Hannibal and continuing their resistance against Rome until their last moments. In this video, we will recount the full story of this resilient Italian people who attempted to halt Rome's advance. The Samnites were an Italic group that inhabited the mountainous region of Samnium, located in what is now southern central Italy, encompassing parts of modern Campania. Emerging from the first millennium BC, they were part of the Osco-Umbrian linguistic family, speaking Osco, a language shared with other central and southern Italian people. Rather than being governed by centralized authority, the Samnites were organized into separate tribes, including the Caudini, Hirpini, Pentri, and Caraceni. This decentralized structure was typical of Italic societies, yet the Samnites were able to unite in confederations whenever they faced external threats, particularly from adversaries such as Rome. Samnite territory was characterized by steep mountains and limited fertile land. This landscape played a crucial role in shaping their way of life. The harsh environment fostered a resilient and skilled warrior culture, with the Samnites excelling in combat, particularly in rugged terrain. From an initial period, the Samnites interacted with various neighboring groups, including the Etruscans, Greeks, and Latins. These exchanges led to the adoption of certain cultural influences, especially in art and religious practices. Greek influence, for instance, can be observed in religious rituals and artifacts discovered at Samnite archaeological sites. However, these interactions were not always peaceful. Their intense sense of independence frequently brought them into conflict with rival communities over land and resources. The Samnites practiced an animist religion, believing that spirits and divine forces inhabited natural elements, such as mountains, rivers, and forests. One of their notable traditions was Ver Sacrum, Sacred Spring, a rite in which, during times of overpopulation, young men were dedicated to the gods and sent to establish new settlements. A legend recorded by the Roman historian Strabo suggests that the Samnites originated from this custom, following a sacred bull that led them to Samnium, where they founded their communities. Daily life among the Samnites revolved around agriculture and animal husbandry. They cultivated grains, grapes, and olives, while herding sheep and goats in the highlands. However, they were not solely farmers and shepherds. The Samnites were also formidable warriors. Their mastery of ambush tactics and ability to utilize the mountainous landscape in battle gave them a strategic advantage over opponents such as Rome. The Etruscans, who controlled much of central Italy prior to Rome's rise, were among the earliest groups to interact with the Samnites. Their relationship was characterized by both competition and cultural influence. Skilled in metallurgy and architecture, the Etruscans shaped aspects of Samnite material culture, particularly in the crafting of weapons and everyday goods. Despite these exchanges, both people vied for dominance in central Italy. By the 5th century BC, the Samnites had begun pushing into Etruscan-held territories, including Campania. These incursions resulted in clashes, but also enabled the Samnites to seize key urban centers, such as Capua, which later became one of Italy's wealthiest and most strategically important cities. Further south, the Samnites confronted the Greeks, who had established colonies in Magna Graecia, a region filled with influential city-states. Their rivalry revolved around controlling fertile lands and trade networks. One notable event was the Samnite takeover of the Greek city of Neapolis, modern Naples. This process unfolded gradually, leading to cultural assimilation, as the Samnites adopted elements of Greek architecture, artistic traditions, and religious practices. As a result, Neapolis became a bridge between the Greek world and the Italic tribes. From the Greek perspective, the Samnites were often viewed as uncivilized highlanders, a sentiment reflected in the writings of historians like Strabo. Meanwhile, the Samnites maintained complex relationships with other Italic groups, including the Latins, Volsci, and Umbrians. At times, they formed strategic alliances against shared adversaries, while at other moments, territorial disputes led to conflict. Throughout the 5th century BC, these shifting alliances allowed the Samnites to consolidate their strength and stand against more formidable foes. However, struggles over regions such as Campania and Lucania frequently sparked conflicts with neighboring peoples. These internal divisions ultimately weakened the Italic groups, facilitating Rome's eventual dominance. The Samnites first encountered Rome directly in the 4th century BC during Rome's push southward. Initially, the relationship remained peaceful. In 354 BC, they formalized a treaty defining their respective spheres of influence, an acknowledgement of Samnite power by Rome. This stability, however, was short-lived. As Rome expanded its control over Campania, tensions arose, particularly concerning the fertile Campanian plain. The resulting friction triggered the First Samnite War, 343 to 341 BC, initiating a prolonged struggle between the two nations. Titus Livy recounts that the Romans regarded the Samnites as a fierce and formidable people who commanded the heart of Italy. Ab Urbe Condita, Book 7. Early in the war, Rome secured victories at Montegaris and Suasula, where Roman military discipline proved superior. However, the rugged terrain of Samnium made long-term campaigns difficult. The war concluded with the treaty in which the Samnites conceded Rome's influence over Campania, while maintaining sovereignty over their own territory. This agreement, however, did little to ease underlying tensions. The Second Samnite War erupted following Rome's establishment of the colony of Fregale in the Liris River Valley, a contested region viewed as vital to Samnite security. Roman encroachment posed a direct threat to Samnite autonomy, escalating the conflict. The war saw significant fluctuations in momentum. One of the Samnites' greatest triumphs occurred in 321 at the Battle of Caudine Forks. Here, Roman forces were ambushed in a narrow pass and subjected to the humiliation of passing beneath a yoke of spears, symbolizing their surrender. However, Rome soon adopted a strategy. From 315 BC onwards, infrastructure improvements, such as the construction of the Appian Way, facilitated the swift deployment of Roman forces. The tide turned in favor of Rome, culminating in decisive victories, such as the Battle of Bovianum in 305 BC. The war ended with a treaty that, while allowing the Samnites to retain a degree of independence, severely diminished their territorial control. 7 years later, in 298 BC, the Third Samnite War broke out. Recognizing the common threat posed by Rome, the Samnites allied with the Etruscans, Umbrians, and Gauls in a last-ditch effort to curb Roman expansion. The conflict reached its climax in the Battle of Sentinum, 295 BC, one of the most significant engagements of ancient Italy. The Roman forces, commanded by consuls Publius Decius Mus and Quintus Fabius, clashed with the coalition of Samnites and their allies. During the battle, Decius Mus performed the devotio, sacrificing himself to inspire his troops and secure Rome's victory. Although the Samnites continued fighting beyond Sentinum, they became increasingly isolated and weakened. Rome intensified its military campaigns, and by 290 BC, the final remnants of Samnite resistance were crushed. Therefore, the Samnites were forced into submission, with their autonomy severely curtailed and their status reduced to that of subordinate allies of Rome. Yet, their struggle was not entirely over. When Pyrrhus of Epirus arrived in Italy to aid the Greek city-states of Magna Graecia against Rome, the Samnites saw a renewed opportunity to challenge their oppressors. They pledged troops to Pyrrhus's army and participated in crucial battles such as Heraclea in 280 BC and Asculum, 297 BC. Despite securing initial victories, Pyrrhus ultimately failed to defeat Rome, and the Samnite cause weakened further with his departure. The Second Punic War provided another chance for the Samnites to rise against Rome. When Hannibal launched his invasion of Italy and triumphed in battles such as Cannae, 216 BC, the Samnites seized the moment to rebel. Alongside other Italic groups, they viewed Hannibal as a potential liberator and supplied him with troops and provisions. The mountainous terrain of Samnium allowed them to engage in guerrilla warfare, disrupting Roman operations. Nevertheless, their alliance with Hannibal did not yield the desired results. Rome eventually regaining control, crushing Carthage, and reaffirming its authority over Italy. As retribution for siding with Hannibal, the Samnites suffered severe repercussions. Land confiscations, city destructions, and forced relocations, ensuring their subjugation under Roman rule. The concluding chapter of Samnite resistance unfolded during the Social War, 91 to 88 BC, when multiple Italic groups rose against Rome, demanding full citizenship rights. As one of the principal forces in this uprising, the Samnites proved that their desire for autonomy endured, despite centuries under Roman control. Under the command of leaders such as Pontius Telesinus, they waged an intense struggle, participating in key battles, and even coming close to storming Rome in 87 BC. Telesinus famously declared his goal was to eradicate Rome and extinguish its power permanently. During the civil conflicts between the factions of Gaius Marius and Lucius Cornelius Sulla, the Samnites aligned with Marius, believing he offered the best opportunity to continue their fight against Roman dominance. Sulla, known for his cruelty and loyalty to the Roman aristocracy, was viewed as a direct enemy. Their role in the war proved significant, but it also made them prime targets for Sulla's vengeance. In 82 BC, the Samnites, alongside the Marian forces, engaged in the Battle of the Colline Gate at the outskirts of Rome. This confrontation became one of the bloodiest encounters in Roman history. Once again, led by Pontius Telesinus, the Samnites fought with unparalleled determination, attempting to breach the city's defenses. However, Sulla's troops ultimately repelled them, inflicting a crushing defeat. Following this victory, Sulla ordered the mass execution of captured Samnite warriors. His campaign of terror extended throughout the Samnian region, where he systematically destroyed towns, seized land, and forcibly displaced populations. The Greek geographer Strabo later remarked that Samnium was left desolate in the aftermath of Sulla's devastation. With their homeland in ruins and their people scattered, the Samnites lost their distinct cultural identity. The Osco language gradually disappeared, replaced by Latin, while their religious traditions were absorbed into Roman customs. Over time, the descendants of the Samnites integrated into Roman society, becoming citizens like the rest of the empire's inhabitants. Despite their downfall, the historian Livy described them as a people who fought to the last man in defense of their homeland. If you found this historical account interesting, remember to like this video and subscribe to our channel. See you in the next one.